Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us for the Struthers Parkinson Center Coffee and Chat this morning. We're so glad to have you all here with us. And so without further ado, I will pass it off to our very own Dr. Nance to get us started on our presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Nance.
Well, thank you. I was going to do this presentation along with my center manager, Joan Hloss. But she was kind of pulled away for a family emergency, I'm afraid. So you just get me. And let me, I think I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully people can see it.
Oh, yes, it looks perfect.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Abby. So welcome to Struthers Parkinson Center. I'm Martha Nance. I'm the neurologist and medical director. I've been the medical director here since 2000, which is getting to be a long time now. And I thought we could first take you on kind of a tour of our building and tell you a little bit about our history, and then talk about how our connections with our community and with our donors have been so critical to our growth and our recognition as a Parkinson Foundation Center of Excellence. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about what we think is coming, sort of both in the near future and then maybe in the farther future in the coming years. So the idea of a Parkinson Center began with the really visionary leadership of Dr. Paul Silverstein and Ruth Hagestuen, who was a nurse. Back in the 1970s, they had this kind of silly idea that rehab therapy along with medications could help lead to optimal function in people with Parkinson's. What a silly idea, because it's just a progressive disease. It's only going to get worse. But they had this idea and they soldiered on in the basement of Methodist Hospital in the rehab department from 1978 until the mid 1990s. And guess what? Rehab therapy does help people with Parkinson's. In the 1990s, along came Evelyn Struthers. Evelyn's husband, Alan, had Parkinson's disease, and she had this idea that people with Parkinson's and their partners needed a safe place, basically a day program, a place where people with Parkinson's could go to do activities that would enhance their life, give the spouse a break from sort of 24/7 care. And so in 1995, the Struthers family provided the philanthropic support that turned our building into the vibrant Parkinson Center that we are today. It was a pre-existing building that was a same-day surgery center up until we moved in. So on this slide, on the far left is Ruth Hagestuen, who I have to say, we just lost Ruth within the last month. I think the world is a slightly less bright place with her death. Dr. Silverstein is right next to Ruth, and Evelyn Struthers on the left side of the poster board, and others in the Struthers family and so on. It's really been, from the very beginning here in Golden Valley, it's really been a partnership with our community and with our families. So here we are in the clinic space. I will probably point out several times, because we're really proud of it, that we are a Parkinson Foundation Center of Excellence. In fact, we are the model for a Parkinson Foundation Center of Excellence. And there's actually a historical reason for that, which is when Ruth Hagestuen retired from Nicollet, she took a job with at the time it was called the National Parkinson Foundation, to actually create their Center of Excellence program. So it was sort of bringing our model of care nationally. And Centers of Excellence have to include clinical care, rehab therapies, support services, outreach, and teaching and research, which is all of what we do. So we've remodeled the building several times, and this is just sort of a walk down the hallway into our clinic space. We have something like, it'll soon be 9 or 10 exam rooms, and 5, soon to be 6, doctors working alongside the nurses, the social workers, and we actually have on site now a neuropsychologist who also lives in this clinic area. And in this space, we evaluate and manage the care of somewhere plus or minus 2,000 people with Parkinson's disease and related conditions. And we really embrace our patients. We follow them from diagnosis through what is sometimes a decades-long course of their disease. I am seeing patients today that I saw 2000 when I first became the center director. So as we move towards the back of the building, this shows some of the equipment that's used by the occupational therapists. This thing that looks like a kitchen is actually what we call an ADL kitchen, where they're working with clients to say, well, how do you open the refrigerator door safely? And do you remember to turn the burners off if you're cooking and things like that? How do you shift from one place to another? And then on the right side of this slide, the wide open mouth there in the background and the microphone, you could guess that's our speech therapist, who we kind of put them in the back of the building because they make so much noise. So we have OTs who do all sorts of different things: home safety evaluations, driving evaluations, wellness sort of activities, energy conservation strategies, equipment needs. The speech therapist who just want people to speak louder. We have 5 physical therapists who work tirelessly in one-on-one sessions with patients, and also in group exercise classes that are tiered to 3 different levels of ability. So we can help our patients stay fit and active throughout the course of their disease, from the day of diagnosis when they're running marathons to elderly, frail folks who really can't get out of a chair but still want to do some kind of exercise activities. One of our unique offerings is our CREATE program, which was really the brainchild of Evelyn Struthers, which serves to enhance the lives of people in the mid to later stages of the disease through CREATE is an acronym for creative, research, educational, artistic, and therapeutic endeavors. This program has historically been supported by our rehab therapists, our nurses, social workers. We've had a very active music therapy program over many years, and we've connected with different community programs also over the years, including arts activities. A woman organization called Artsy Smartsy, where she brings art materials in her little SUV and does art activities. We've had music activities, theater groups, animal assisted therapy, massage and yoga instructors, as well as a longstanding relationship with the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum on a horticultural program. So here you see on the left a piano, and on the right is a piano. On the left is a swallowtail butterfly enjoying the benefits of our horticultural program. So our most recent building renovations included 3 rather dramatic improvements. Our physical therapists are always training people in strategies to improve walking. We're really big on Nordic walking, and you could see them out in the parking lot in the middle of the winter walking around with patients using Nordic sticks. And it's really not safe. So the last time we renovated the building, we had an indoor walking path built, which also has this beautiful sort of garden, lets the light into the building. That's paralleled by a couple of outdoor walking paths. So when the weather's a little bit better, the therapists really work to train people on how do you walk on different textures of surfaces. And then you can't shut us up. Everybody in the building loves to share their wisdom and experience and knowledge, but we really needed a dedicated space to do these kind of educational activities. So our staff, and so this is our nice education space. We do educational classes and support groups for both patients and caregivers, but also have a number of educational programs for healthcare professionals in the local area, the region, and even nationally. And then finally, we embed research in daily work. We have a dedicated staff of research coordinators who work with our physicians, our neuropsychologists, and others on the team to develop and participate in and even lead local and national and international research projects. This slide shows we have what used to be just kind of a little tiny closet storage area that has morphed into our specimen processing area with a -80 freezer and a centrifuge. So yay, it looks a little bit like a laboratory. We are a member of the Parkinson Study Group, which is sort of a national consortium of mostly academic centers doing clinical research in Parkinson's. We partner with the Health Partners Institute in organizing and monitoring our research studies. Our mothership is in Golden Valley, but in recent years we have sort of developed a satellite site in the Neuroscience Center at Health Partners in St. Paul. And one of our most effective collaborations has been really working together on research studies. Dr. Struthers Parkinson is our research physician lead. And kind of I'm sort of the other main research person, and been kind of fun for me as if anybody knows me, my shtick is genetics. And finally, after 30 years, genetics is relevant to Parkinson's. And so I'm on kind of the leadership committees of a study doing genetic testing in Parkinson's, and then a international actually trial of a drug that we think might be specifically helpful for a particular genetic form of Parkinson's. So that's who we are. That's what our building is. And just to kind of summarize sort of the high points of who we are and what we think we do, the idea started in 1978. We moved to our present Golden Valley location in 1995. We really serve the whole upper Midwest region with clinical research, education, and support activities. We've been a center of excellence designated by the Parkinson Foundation since 1995. We really are nationally recognized for our team-based approach to the care of Parkinson's. We include all these different health professionals all in one building. And that it really is interesting when you look at other centers of excellence and they say, oh yeah, we have a team, we work together. I say, oh, where's your physical therapist? They say, oh yeah, they're in that other building. I think it's on the 4th floor. And well, what physical therapist do you send people to? Well, whoever is available, and so for us, we really do work side by side and eat lunch together. And then recent changes, we've actually had some turnover in the last year with a number of our longstanding team members retiring. And it's like, oh my God, how's that going to work? But you know what? We've got new people in, we've got new energy, we've got new ideas. So we added a 5th physician last year who's a neuropalliative care specialist. And this is a new field in neurology. And Dr. Webb Kay is going to be on the ground floor of kind of figuring out what neuropalliative care is and how does it apply in movement disorders. We added an on-site neuropsychologist, we added a 5th physical therapist, and then in 2024, this summer, a new physician whose interest is in dementia in movement disorders. So that's, again, just to summarize who we are and what we're up to. We have been pleased, I think, that where does our revenue come from? It's obviously doctors and rehab therapists, our work is compensated by third-party payers, but a lot of the special things, a lot of the unique things that make us truly a center of excellence are the things that go beyond just the doctor and the therapist doing their thing. Some of these activities are grant supported. Our exercise groups and other classes are private pay. And then we really do rely on philanthropy to support many of our kind of unique programs, as well as the bigger things like building renovations. So for instance, the physical therapy space used to be just a crowded, little exam room kind of thing. Well, we now have that open gym area that I showed on the slide and another open exercise room. The philanthropy allows us to provide really full team-based care, people who can't go for their services, music therapy, even the social work services are somewhat compensated by our designation as a center of excellence. And a lot of our wellness programs, people live with Parkinson's for 20 years. And so there's a lot of living to be done, and we really emphasize living well. So exercise classes, cognition classes, voice classes, this long-standing relationship with the Arboretum to have this sort of nature-based therapeutic environment, artwork in the building and so on. And then many of our educational programs, we have a class for newly diagnosed patients. We have a deep brain stimulation class. We have several, not just support groups, but actually what we call a caregiver skills building class. Our caregivers said, it's fine to sit around a room and talk, but we really need to know how to do stuff. How do I get him up off the floor when he falls? And so a caregiver skills building class. And now in the post-COVID era, working to get many of these things online so that so people don't always have to come to the building to receive our wisdom and review it again or do it in their own time from the comfort of their sofa at 10 o'clock at night. So many of these things are supported by philanthropy. The CREATE activities are pretty much exclusively based on connections with our community and with philanthropic support. So the respite programs, the mindfulness programs, and so on. Music therapy is donor supported. And as I said, the educational classes. So a small donation to research actually launched Dr. Parashas's career as a researcher. So it enabled him to do a small study that was a survey of falling in Parkinson's. And we sent the survey to 1,000 people and got 800 responses, which is like the highest response rate to any survey in the history of man, which shows you that there was an interest in falling. And that led to a study that he developed on really keeping diaries of falls and defining different types of falls. And that led for him being on working groups and writing groups and study groups about falling in Parkinson's, and so really launched his career. So partnership with donors and community is a huge thing for us. So what do I envision in the future? In the near term, we have been a little bit slow to adopt technology. I think 10 years ago I said, all our patients are old people who knew how to use a computer and don't ever want to use a computer, and so we were kind of slow to adopt technology. But I think increasingly both patients are using things like smartwatches or similar devices, but all of our therapists need to be using devices that can directly record data or analyze data. Or therapeutic tools that use, computer-based software, iPads, and so on. And then, this is something that's really coming down the pike is the idea of wearable therapeutic devices of various types. A big thing in research last year was a study about this Parkinson's glove that somehow sends little signals up to the brain, that sends little signals back down, that seems to help treat some of the Parkinson symptoms. We're working with a startup company locally that's developing a device that is worn inside the shoe to help people who have freezing of gait, where their feet kind of get stuck to the floor and they need some kind of a little trigger that helps them get unstuck. And there's some thought that just a little device that gives a little stimulus directly to the foot can help people get started again. So technology really propelling ourselves into the technology-based 21st century. We have a new music therapist because our old music therapist retired, and both upgrading equipment, just old-fashioned equipment, but also using having things like keyboards and programmable devices for music therapy as well. And just a sidebar about music therapy, music makes such a difference in our patients' lives in different ways. So, for instance, our patients often are very tight and tense, and if you play your favorite relaxing music, that might help a particular person to kind of relax and reduce some of that rigidity that's caused by Parkinson's. For other patients whose feet get stuck to the floor, you may use rhythm, bum, 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 to kind of get you moving again. For other people, if you look at somebody with Parkinson's, they often look very flat. And how do you sort of bring somebody out? We have to tell us that they can hardly talk worth a darn, but they can sing. And when they sing, their emotions come out too. And so music can really be used in several different ways to enhance the lives of people with Parkinson's. So as I kind of suggested before, the rehab folks need sort of upgraded technology. So both sort of old-fashioned things like equipment for a home safety demonstration, and actually having samples of nowadays you can have a camera in your mother's house so you could see if mother has fallen. Speech therapy equipment, more sophisticated devices to use in rehab to help train people in balance without running the risk of falls. Another fancy device that the rehab folks want that can help them train people on bed mobility. Things you never think about if you don't have any trouble with it. How do you get out of bed in the morning? It's a big deal for people with Parkinson's disease. And so train people techniques to help them be able to quite literally get out of bed in the morning. We have these ancient old, like, I don't know what they are, exam room beds that we hardly ever use because they're not very usable. And so looking to upgrade some of our exam room equipment. I showed you our education space that we added when we last updated the building, but if you notice, it's a little tiny screen up there at the front of the room. Wouldn't it be nice to have a bigger screen? And it's actually time to upgrade some of our AV equipment. And then we as I mentioned before, we have these pathways outside, and the wooden benches that we put out there haven't lasted because this is Minnesota, and so having new metal benches would be helpful. And what areas are growing in Parkinson's? What's really going to happen in the future? As I said, we've already added a neuropalliative care specialist and a dementia specialist. People live with Parkinson's now for years to decades. And the disorder has grown beyond being just a movement disorder that causes tremor and slow movements to being a very complex disorder that includes cognitive changes, just at a time when both the patient and their partners are aging. So what happens in Parkinson's kind of gets overlain by things that maybe not strictly due to Parkinson's, but are part of the aging process. And how do we more fully support people in that later stage of the disease that people now live into? I think back before we had Parkinson medications and deep brain stimulation surgery and all these things that we did, and all the rehab therapy, people would not live as long with Parkinson's. But now that people live longer, we need to really embrace this later stage of the disease. Dr. Webb-Kay has already started what we call a neuropalliative clinic. That ideally would include a neurologist, a social worker, and a chaplain. We had a chaplain here in the past, but again, with COVID and other things, that has gone away, and we really would like to have it back. I think as you approach end-of-life decision-making and just navigate into end-of-life care, it really goes beyond just the medical stuff. There's logistical issues, there's support for the caregiver, and then there's the more spiritual issues, that I think a chaplain can help our folks to navigate. And then, upgrading our rehab space to accommodate this sort of specialized care that we're going to be doing. And as we've grown, we need an updated front desk area. Our poor little folks at our front desk are crammed in this little tiny space. They need a larger space to greet our folks as they come. So I mentioned the chaplain care. We're hoping to do this even this year, to at least get somebody here for half a day a month, and then kind of build from there. I think historically in medicine don't really address the spiritual dimension. I don't view myself as an expert in spiritual health, but as I get older and as I watch family members and, good things happen, bad things happen, increasingly I'm aware that spirituality is a huge part of being healthy, living well, coming to peace with the changes that happen. And then, as I suggested earlier, a small donation to fund a pilot research project could launch a career. With new doctors will come new ideas. We also have a new occupational therapist, a new music therapist, a couple new physical therapists, a new neuropsychologist. And with all these new folks in the building, I think there are new ideas and little pilot projects that, whether it's really a research thing or just sort of a clinical pilot project, I think it's an exciting time for us as we bring in all these new folks. And then partnership with the Health Partners Institute helps us to kind of streamline our research processes. So that's did I do half an hour? Oh, yes, I did, half an hour. I'm ready to take any questions that people might have.
Let's see here. Well, we do have, let me see.
Comment?
Oh, yes, I do have a couple questions here for you. One of the first questions we have is, if we have a family member we'd like to bring to SPC, can you give a quick synopsis of what the intake process looks like and how quickly they can see someone?
So the intake process includes calling 952-993-5495. And in general, new callers are directed, believe it or not, to a human being. So typically you would actually speak with the social worker, who would kind of ask what it is you're looking for. So some people just want to see the doctor for a second opinion, and that's fine, and we're happy to do that. One of our signature offerings, however, is a thing called a team assessment clinic, where you spend the better part of the day here and you see not only the doctor and the nurse, but you spend an hour with physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, some time with the music therapist, and the social worker. And that can be particularly useful for somebody who's kind of already diagnosed with Parkinson's, and some doctor told them they have it and they take these pills, but they've sort of never really learned anything else about Parkinson's other than going to the doctor and getting meds refilled. It's also particularly useful for people who are coming from a distance. We are pretty aggressive about the idea, again, dating back to the 1970s, that doing well with Parkinson's is not just about going to the doctor and taking pills, that all these other things make a difference too. How long are we booked out? I don't know, it's probably a couple months. But maybe it's 3 months. I don't know. It feels like it's a couple of months.
Thank you so much. And then Elizabeth here shared in the chat that the SPC intake process is thorough and friendly. So that's wonderful to hear. And before I read one of the other questions, Barry shares, thank you, Dr. Nance, for your amazing leadership and excellent care delivery. Palliative care appreciates your partnership and care. All wonderful things.
When I see a question, are there upcoming events or ways to support Struthers?
Yes, yes.
We have an endless array of upcoming events, so I'll probably forget some of them. So April is Parkinson's Awareness Month, and in recognition of that, we have a number of, so every Parkinson organization in the country has seminars and classes and things and whatever. we do a series of Tuesday evening seminars on different topics related to Parkinson's. And we've done this for a number of years. And we try to have one on the north end of town, one on the south end of town, one on the east, one in the west, different topics, different speakers. Those are directed primarily at patients and families. We have a email mailing list that you can sign up for. I think if you email us at, I think it's spc@partnicollet.com, then you can get and say, I'd like to be on your email mailing list. Then we would add you to the email mailing list, and you get a weekly email just kind of letting you know what we're up to. I often just hit delete. But because I guess I usually know what's going on here. But if so you could be on our email mailing list. There's April Parkinson's Awareness Month. We also support, because they support us, the first weekend in May is the local chapter of the Parkinson Foundation's annual event, which is a walk. They call it Moving Day. And that's actually kind of cool if you want to get the idea that there really is a Parkinson's community. It's outdoors, and there's often like 1,000 people at this event. It does not directly support Struthers, but the Parkinson Foundation supports Struthers, so indirectly. In July, we have our annual golf event, and it's on, Abby or Ivy, do you remember, it's usually the Monday after July 4th. So like the 8th maybe of July. And if you want more information, if you are a golfer or know somebody who is a golfer, or if you want to, okay, July 22nd, so it's a little bit later this year. And is it back at Edina?
Ivy's our expert.
It's in Hopkins at Oak Ridge.
Oak Ridge this year. Okay. Thank you, Ivy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So July 22nd at Oak Ridge. So if you are a golfer, know somebody who's a golfer, can get a foursome together, or if you want to help as a volunteer with the golf event, we're always looking for people to help on the day of the event, or just in the planning process. And then typically in the fall, in September, we have our sort of gala event, kind of an awards banquet called this Paul M. Silverstein Awards Banquet, honoring Paul Silverstein and recognizing each year 3 or 4 people in the Parkinson's community who've just done amazing things. And there's no end to the people in the Parkinson's community who've done amazing things. So that too it's more of a old-fashioned dinner and wine, and we usually have a silent auction at that event. And in recent years, we've gone to doing a little bit of live stuff. If you've never done Heads and Tails, that's an exciting event. So that's another event that comes up for us. And the golf and the Silverstein are our main fundraising activities. We do a number of other events throughout the year that are not directly fundraising events, but really inviting the community in. And again, if you get on our email mailing list, you can hear about those as they come up.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nance. So many exciting opportunities. Let's see here. Another question we have is, let me see here. I just saw one pop through. Oh, yes. Can you say more about the work SPC does to support caregivers? It is such an important part of your work.
Yes, we get it. We know that's a big deal. So, number one, we have a clinic social worker who is sometimes sort of available on call when people come in and they're in a crisis. I can often corral. We actually have 3 social workers in the building, so somebody might be there that could be corralled in a hurry if we need it. Number 2, one of our social workers as a licensed counselor, and will sometimes provide counseling not just for the patient, but also for the caregiver. We have a virtual caregiver support group and an in-person caregiver support group that meet monthly. We have, as I mentioned before, this caregiver skills building class, and that's a monthly series that it's 12 different topics, so you can join in anytime and you come once a month, and after a year you will have talked about the 12 topics. And I can't remember if that's online or in person at this point. November is caregiver recognition month, and we do a luncheon for caregivers that we've traditionally done over at the Golden Valley Country Club, which is conveniently right across the street from us. And then, as I said, we're developing this palliative care offering. As I said, the field of neuropalliative care is still trying to invent itself. Where does it fit in? One could argue that all we ever do in the Parkinson Center is palliative care. We have yet to cure anybody of anything. So in a certain sense, all we do is palliate. All we do is help people live to their fullest extent. But I think people think of palliative care as being more sort of in the later stage of the disease, where people are really needing more help. And so the palliative care clinic 100% completely involves not just the patient, but the care partner, and, by the way, extended family, who also tend to get pulled into things as time goes on. So those are some of the things we do.
Thank you so much, because that is such an important component. And so I appreciate you speaking to that. Let's see here. I think those are all of the questions that I'm seeing. Let me double check the chat. I might have missed something. Let me see here. I'm sorry, let's see here. Oh, yes. And looks like the one campaign question got answered. Well, again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to pass them off to Dr. Nance offline if you would like. And also, we will include the link to the book too when we send out this recording, because it just is so special. And I think that, at least speaking for myself, Dr. Nance, I think it's so special that you partnered with the co-author to write that book. I think that it's really touching, and I'm happy that you were able to speak to that today too. But thank you so much for your wonderful presentation, and everybody, thank you for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, and if anybody ever wants to come over to the center and see what we look like, pick a time where I'm not in clinic with patients, and Joan Haas, our center manager, couldn't be here today, but between the two of us, we'd be happy to show people around. We like to show our place off. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.